12:52, Megilat Esther. Hi, Steve. Good morning. Okay, and we're going to be covering this morning or presenting Megilat Esther on a number of different levels. A little nippy, huh? Yeah. Right?
I'm fine, Rabbi.
Yeah, I happen to like it. Okay? We're going to be presenting Megilat Esther on a number of different levels. Okay? The first level is what the Vilna Gaon presents. And that is that in addition to the actual story that took place, this is also representing mankind, the odyssey that mankind goes through, and the challenges that come along the way. Okay. In other words, we view this world, life, as a challenge, as an avenue for self-fulfillment that a person, a neshama, a soul, is joined together with a body and is sent down into this world. And in this world, the person needs to struggle, but I was going to say maintain focus. Maintain focus about what life is meant to be, what one's priorities are meant to be, and not get washed away by all that this world presents and tempts and leads a person, or can lead a person to. So the Vilna Gaon explains that each of the main characters in the Megillah actually represent different roles, different players in this grand play, in this grand scheme. And he explains, the Megillah begins, Vayihi bimei Achashverosh. And it was in the days of Achashverosh. Who is Achashverosh on this deeper level of understanding? Achashverosh, that refers to the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, that which tries to tempt us, that which presents its challenges to us. Hamolech mehodu va'ad Kush, who rules from Hodu until Kush. Sheva, who ruled from Hodu until Kush. Sheva ve'esrim umeya medina, 127 medina, provinces. How does the Gemara explain this? And how does the Vilna Gaon interweave that into his explanation? Achashverosh, he says, that is the Yetzer Hara. Right? The Gemara says, why was he called Achashverosh? Whoever mentions his name says, Ach Larosh. Ach Larosh. Ay, 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 ay. That's Ach Larosh. An Ach, an Ay to the Rosh, to the head. The Vilna Gaon explains the Yetzer Hara. Why? What's the connection between Ach Larosh and the Yetzer Hara? Well, whenever there's a temptation, it seems to be an overwhelming temptation that we feel we can't control. That's when it's in front of us. As soon as we give in and have that fifth Entenmann's donut, right? And as it's coming down, we say to ourselves, what did I do? Right? And whatever it is, right? We know we shouldn't say something to somebody, but we can't control ourselves. And we say it to the person. And now we're dealing with the damage that was caused by our saying it to that person. What do we say? Ugh, what was I thinking?
The Rosh is the head.
The Rosh is the head. Right? So that is the Achashverosh. Hamolech, who rules, Mehodu vad kush. See, he explains, Hodu, what does Hod mean? Like glory, right? Glow, right? Kush. Kush means darkened, right? So he rules a person from when he is that glorious child full of that glow of all that's ahead until the person is later on in life, darkened. Sheva ve'esr mumeya medina, right? The first 7 years, right? The kid does whatever he wants. He gets used to doing that till he's 20, and then by then he set the patterns all the way until he is 100. And what does the king do? The king makes, what does Achashverosh do? He makes a big party. Right? He makes a big party. Life is this big party. And what does he do there? Baharoto, he shows Osher, Kavod, I'm in verse 4. He shows the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days. What does he do? Right? He shows his glory. He shows his wealth. He shows all the things that can be available to a person. Now, at this party, very, very interesting, look in verse 8. Vashatia kidat, ein ones. The drinking was according to law. Ein ones. No one is forced. Kichein yisad hamelech. Al kol rav beito lasot kirtzon ish v'ish. On the simple level, what's happening over here? At Achashverosh's party, the drinking was according to law, no one was forced. That's what the king had ordered all the officers. They should do according to the wishes, the pleasure of each and every man. Okay, the Gemara says to do the will of man and man, ish v'ish. The Gemara says, well, let's see. Who in the Megillah is referred to as an ish? Who in the Megillah is referred to as an ish? Mordechai, ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan Abira. Mordechai is referred to as an ish Yehudi, a Jewish man in Shushan Abira. Who else is referred to as an ish, as a man? Ish, tsar v'oyev, Haman, hara hazeh. Esther at the second party, she points the finger at Haman and says, right, Achashverosh said to her, Mihu zeh ve'ezahu, who's the one who's doing all this to you? And she says, Ish. So the Gemara says, oh, who was in charge of this party? Ish and Ish. Mordechai and Haman were both in charge of this party. Haman as an officer, Mordechai also as an officer, trying to diminish the damage that this party would be causing to the Jews. Now, that's what the Gemara says. Now, a familiar teaching that the Gra and others say is, when it says Achashverosh or Hamelech Achashverosh, either Achashverosh or King Achashverosh, that refers to Achashverosh. When it says Hamelech, the king, that's a reference to God. God's name does not appear once explicitly in the entire Megillah, but wherever it says HaMelech, the king, that's a reference to God. So the Vilna Gaon says as follows. In this party that the Yetzer Hara throws, that we call life, there are certain rules that HaMelech, that God puts into play. What's that? Vashatia kidat. The drinking is done properly. Ein ones. No one is forced. Kichein yisad hamelech. That's what was established by who? The God, the king. Al kol rav beito, over all those who are the officers of his house, all those who he delegates some of the running of this world to. Lasot kirtzon ish v'ish, to do the will of each and every person, meaning what? Everyone has their choice, their free will. Everyone decides. It's a big party, but no one gets forced. Everyone does what they want to do the ratzon of Ish and Ish. Who's Ish and Ish, we said? Mordechai and Haman, meaning what? If you want to become a Mordechai, that's your choice. You want to become a Haman? That's your choice. That's the nature of this party that's going on over here. Gam Vashti Hamalka, verse 9. Asta mishtei nashim, Beit HaMalchut asher lemelech Achashverosh. Vashti the queen also made a feast for the woman in the royal house of King Achashverosh. Who does Vashti represent on this Vilna Gaon level? Vashti is the wife of Achashverosh. Meaning what? Vashti is the neshama, right? Who is completely married, completely embraces the Achashverosh, the Yetzer Hara, who's completely embracing of everything, all of the allures of this world. But what happens though? Beyom HaShvi'i Ketov Lev HaMelech B'Yayin Amar, he said, Lemahuman, etc., etc., of Posuk 11, Lavi et Vashti HaMalka Lifnei HaMelech B'Keter Malchut. To bring Vashti the queen before who? The king, HaMelech. B'Keter Malchut, with the crown of her royalty. What is this referring to? Naked. Well, we'll come soon to the nakedness. Okay? The Gemara says, Gemara will explain, we'll bring in the Gemara in a minute. At a certain point, the party's over. And that's when this person, even if they were married to that Yetzer Hara, they get called before the Melech. This is what we call after 120 years. At the end, they're called before the king. What are they meant to show to the king? With what do they appear before the king? Keter Malchut, with the crown of royalty. What is that crown comprised of? All that a person has done, the mitzvot, the good deeds, all the accomplishments that a person has. They are called before the Melech. But what happens? Pasuk Yud Bet. Vatma'ain, verse 12. Vatma'ain Hamalka Vashti Lavo. The Malka, the Queen Vashti, is refusing to come. She does not want to come. She recognizes at that point she does her own ach l'rosh, right? Her own, what did I do? Now, the Gemara says that he wanted her to come with only the Keter Malchut, only with the crown, right? Naked besides that. In other words, right, a person is buried, right, simply in the burial shrouds, basically, right, with nothing except for the Keter Malchut, except for our accomplishments. That's all that we have. I forget which great Bali Musar came to speak in America somewhere, and he said Hollywood, which at that point Hollywood was like all about, the excesses of this world. We could learn to believe in God and Olam Haba from Hollywood. How's that? He said, when the greatest, the most glamorous actor or actress dies, what do people say about them? What do they say at the funeral? She was so beautiful.
A legend?
He was such a hunk. Right? He got paid $30 million for a movie. That's not what they say. What do they say? He was kind. She was generous. He gave to a hospital. She gave to an orphanage. At that point, everyone realizes what is real. So she does not want to come. Right? Because all she could come with is with that keter. She does not want to come. The Gemara says two things. The Gemara says she didn't want to come. One opinion is because she had sara'at, leprosy had broken out on her. The other one said that she sprouted a tail. Now, according to the Vilna Gaon, what's going on over here? What does leprosy represent? Right? Leprosy might come from Lashon Hara. Leprosy of the Torah is not leprosy that we know, the medical leprosy. Sarat is a physical manifestation of a spiritual decay, a spiritual ailment. That comes out. Sarat is that which is on the inside comes out. Now we understand, right? According to Vilna Gaon, what does it mean that she had Sarat? Right? At that, right, it can be beautiful on the outside, but in that time, what happens? All that's on the inside comes out, is revealed. What's the idea of sprouting a tail? What is a tail? Animal. Okay? So why would this neshama that's married to the Yetzer Hara, why would it be embarrassed to come? Because it has a tail, meaning what?
She didn't want to come because of among the crowd, to demonstrate among the crowd of drunken
No, that, correct. That's according to the simple level. That's the storyline. Granted, she did not want to come. The Gemara asks, on that storyline, she was quite the showgirl. Why didn't she want to come? The Gemara gives those answers. I'm saying on this Vilna Gaon level, right? So the tail represents animal.
And no free
right?
choice.
In other words, right, no free choice, or having chosen to live their life. I always tell the story, that two buddies, right? They're getting older in life, and they're always wondering, what's the hereafter? What's the afterlife? What's it like? And they agree whoever goes first has to come to the other one in a dream and tell him all about it. Well, 15 years later, 20 years later, one of them goes, right? And he comes back to his friend in a dream. And he says, tell me what it's like. He says, I eat whenever I want to eat. I sleep whenever I want to sleep. So the guy says to him, that's what it's like in the hereafter? He says, no, I came back as a cow in Omaha, right? If life is just eating whenever you want to eat and sleeping whenever, right? So then basically we're living our life as a sophisticated animal. I once explained, I think in this class, or in a different class, Basar v'chalav, we Jews, we don't mix milk and meat. Okay? So Rabbi Hirsch explains so beautifully. What is a plant interested in doing?
Producing seed.
Reproducing, and what else does it want to do? Two things plant wants to do. Survive. How does it survive? Nourishment, reproduction. Right? That's what a plant wants to do. That's what a plant does. Takes in nourishment and reproduces. Along comes but doesn't have mobility. Along comes an animal. And now it has mobility. It's not rooted to the ground. It can go wherever it wants to go. Great. What does it do with its mobility? Reproduction? Nutrition. That's what it does. Now, if we're going to talk about something that best represents mobility, what represents mobility? What gives us the ability to move? Muscle. That's basar, that's meat. That is mobility. What best represents nutrition and reproduction? Milk is that which gives nutrition to that which has just been, that which results from reproduction. So we separate milk and meat because we want to say that our added abilities are not meant to be used for milk, for reproduction and nourishment. We need to live beyond that, above that. Vashti had the tail. What does the tail represent? The animal, right? Therefore, she's embarrassed to come. Therefore, what needs to happen now? There needs to be a new type of person. A person who might live in the palace, but is not married fully to Achashverosh. Rather, someone who takes their orders from elsewhere. There needs to be people who will come to the world, live in the world, be in the palace, interact with the Achashverosh, with the Yetzer Hara, but is actually married elsewhere. Actually takes all of her direction from elsewhere. Introducing two new characters. Who are two new characters? Mordechai and Esther. Mordechai represents the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, the drive to do good. Esther is this new being, this new goof, this new neshama, right? Who's going to be living in the palace, living in with Achashverosh, however, married to a degree to Achashverosh, but not doing the will of Achashverosh, following the dictates, the orders of Mordechai, the Yetzer Tov, as it comes down from HaMelech, with the instructions that we have from HaMelech, from the king.
So, by Vashti continually taking Achashverosh's orders, that led to her spiritual descent?
On this level, the Vilna Gaon is explaining, Vashti represents the one who's completely married into this party, into Achashverosh. Yes.
Some people could be near destructive spiritual influences and still stay a little...
We're talking about extremes over here. Okay. So that is how the Vilna Gaon, explains. Now, I left out one main player. One main player who I didn't explain who he is according to the Vilna Gaon. Haman, right? Now, Haman plays a great role. Haman, if Achashverosh is Olam Hazeh and the Yetzer Hara and all that presents, Haman is the scion. He is the leading, right? He is the Satan. He is the accuser. Now, what happens when Vashti refuses to come? Right? So Haman goes, and what does he do? What role does he play in terms of Vashti and her refusal to come?
Execution.
He's the accuser. He's the executioner, right? So the Vilna Gaon explains this Yetzer Hara. Right? There's a legal term. The legal term I think is entrapment, right? The FBI, right? So if they want to try to catch someone who's trying to buy things, right, for explosives or something like that, they have to be very careful of entrapment. Meaning, it can't be that the person only did it because of them, right? They can't approach the person and say, "Hey, do you want to bomb the World Trade Center?" "No, I don't think I want to." No, it's a really good idea." "Yeah, you think so?" "Yeah, it's a great idea, and I can get you the materials," right? Sell him the materials and then arrest him, right? You can't do that, right? It can't be entrapment, right? But what happens, though, is if it's not entrapment, the person's trying to do it, right? They will help along the way. The person's searching on the internet, how can I get explosives to do something? They'll be the ones who will respond on this deep net, I think they call it, right? Is it called the deep net? I don't know. They'll be the ones who will respond and say, "Yeah, we can get you this stuff from here, from there, from there, from there." And they'll work with the person, and then when they hand it to him, what do? Right? FBI. They arrest him. That's what the Yetzer Hara is. That's what Haman is. Right? He's goading the person. "Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, enjoy. Don't worry about it. No repercussions. You don't have to worry. You have to worry. You have to worry." And then what happens? He's there, who's the one who's testifying against in that Beit Din Shel Mala, in that court high up above. Okay, so that's, besides the storyline that we know in the Megillah, that's a whole other level that this Megillah is running on, that the Vilna Gaon presents. Now, let's go to a third level. Let's go to the Gemara, the Talmudic level, and what the Gemara sees, and what's the storyline that is taking place over here. Vayihi will start again, and it was Achashverosh. Hu Achashverosh, Hamolech Mehodu Vadkush Sheva, right? He ruled there 127, and then he made, on the third year of his kingdom, verse 3, he made a mishta. He made a tremendous party. L'chol sarav avadav, for all of the officers. What was the point of this party? So the Gemara explains, as we've had in our Navi classes, there were prophecies of 70 years of exile, and then God will redeem the Jewish, God will remember, God will redeem the Jewish people. These were known prophecies. And when the years, according to their calculation or miscalculation, were up, the different kings, non-Jewish kings, took that as a message. It's all over. This special relationship with the Jewish people, God has rejected them. He's not taking them back. And now the holy items can be treated recklessly with impunity, and the Jewish people have no one who will take care of them. The 70 years were miscalculated originally by Belshazzar, and he made a party, and he was killed, assassinated that night. Achashverosh, on the third year of his reign, his calculation was the 70 years were up, and the Jews have not been remembered. The second temple, they had started to build it, and it had stopped. And therefore he thought, that's it. It's all over. He made this party to celebrate the end of this Jewish people and their special relationship. And we have a couple of hints to this. In verse 4, when he showed the glorious riches of his kingdom, that Yikar Tiferet Gedulato. and the honor, the ikar of his tiferet. That's a reference to the garments of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. He came out wearing garments of the high priest. Why was he wearing garments of the high priest?
To degrade them and
To degrade it, right? To show that it's all over, right? Now it's a costume. I want to try to go through a little bit. Now it's a costume, right? That which was so sacred, now it's a costume. And then we go on, and verse 7. Well, I'm going to do a little Megillah reading. Right, there's a certain tune of the Megillah. Chor, karpasu techelet, achuz b'chavlei butzvar gaman, agli chesef amudei sheish mitot zahav chesef al, ritzpat bait v'sheish v'dar v'socharet. That's the Megillah tune. And then we switch. V'hashkot b'chlei zahav, v'chelim, mikelim shonim. The reader changes the tune from the festive Megilat Esther tune to the somber Eicha, Lamentations, Tisha B'Av tune. That pasuk is read to the tune of Eicha. Vashkot b'chlei zahav v'chelim, and they drank from golden vessels. V'chelim mikelim shonim, and the goblets were different goblets. What was different about them? These were the kelim, the goblets, the vessels from the temple. Now, if this is the case, we can understand. The Gemara says, the students asked Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, why were the Jews of that generation, why were they brought to the verge of being annihilated? He said back to them, what do you say? Their response was, Shenehenu me'sudat Achashverosh. Because it didn't say that they participated. They enjoyed the Su'udah of Achashverosh. They enjoyed Achashverosh's party. Now, why would enjoying Achashverosh's party be something that could be the cause of their near annihilation? And he rejected it for a different reason. He said, well, that should only affect the Jews of Shushan, not the Jews who were all around the world, and gave a different answer. But their answer did suffice for the Jews of Shushan. Why? Why was that so terrible that they enjoyed the suit of Achashverosh? Well, now we understand. If the king's throwing a party, okay, king's throwing a party. It could be a good party. We can enjoy it. Especially if everything was being done properly according to Haman and Mordechai. So if Mordechai's in charge there, going back to the simple level, you can be sure there's kosher food available. Right? So you're going to this big bash, and there's a lot of kosher food. So not so terrible. Oh, horrific. Horrific. What's so horrific? If this party is a party to celebrate the end of the Jewish people as a people with a unique relationship with God, right? It's like going to a party where the Nazis are celebrating their wonderful accomplishments and their great contributions to mankind during their time in power, right? Imagine a Jew going to such a party, being forced to attend to such a party. But imagine a Jew enjoying such a party. Frightful. Frightful. That is what was this incredible accusation that we had against the Jews over here.
Rabbi,
Yes.
why we are changing the melody from
To give us, why are we changing the melody? To let us know that this has glimmers of the destruction of the temple. We switch the melody from the joyous Purim to the solemn, mourning, soulful Eicha, to let us know, to give us that this is connected to the destruction of the temple. And therefore we understand when we hear about the kalim, the vessels, what vessels are we talking about? The vessels that were plundered from the temple. Yes, Dov.
Maybe also that he's trying to make them give up on the temple being rebuilt also.
Yes, that is correct. And yes, it is meant to just completely shatter any hopes, right? And for us, again, to enjoy such a thing, that was what was frightening.
Did the Jews really realize what was going on?
Whether they realize or not, if they see the vessels of the temple, they see him,
recognize them?
yes, and they see him wearing the garments of the Kohen Gadol, that is overly apparent.
Because it was 70 years ago, there might have been people who weren't even alive during the Holy Temple, and maybe
Yes,
there
but
were...
they knew what it was.
Okay.
They knew what it was. Yes, Janet.
So, on the flip side, though, the fact that they would believe in the prophecy and wait the 70 years, or what they thought were the 70 years, all these rulers, seems to indicate a bit of Yirat Hashem.
Yes.
All these groups. And
Yes.
yet-
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
an interesting flip side
Yes.
of all this.
Yes, that is.
I wonder if these people that enjoyed the party survived also after
Yeah.
when did they survive?
Survived what?
Now,
After
let's go back to where, let's go forward now, fast forward, to where the decree was sent out by Haman and by Achashverosh. Okay, 1256. Now Mordechai, or actually, we'll go 1255, chapter 4. Mordechai yadad kol asher nasa. Mordechai knew all that had been done. And he tore his clothes, he put on the sackcloth. He went out to the midst of the city and he cried out a great and bitter cry. Now it's interesting. On the surface, why was this terrible decree made against the Jews? On the surface, from the story, why was the decree made? What caused this decree against all the Jews?
Haman
Haman, why?
he was jealous.
No. More. Because Mordechai refused to bow down. So who's the one, according to Reuters and AP, right? Who's causing, what caused all of this?
Mordechai.
Mordechai is the one who caused this. And I'm sure many of the Jews were furious with Mordechai, right? You're so old-fashioned, right? You and your refusal to bow down, get over it. Just bow down. You're bringing destruction on us. In fact, what was the cause of the destruction that was coming our way? Our detachment, our point that we were able to enjoy such a party. If we're able to enjoy such a party, it shows that we don't identify with the Jewish people anymore. Right? Whatever happens to them, right? That's not me. Right? We don't identify with that anymore. So Esther hears what's going on, that Mordechai is there in a sackcloth, and she gets all worried. Right? She sends garments to put on ready garments, and he doesn't accept it. Then 1256, verse 5. Esther summons Hatach, one of the king's chambermen. Right? Ladat mazeh va'al mazeh. To know mazeh va'al mazeh. Mazeh, what is this? Va'al mazeh. And why is this? The Gemara asks, the Gemara explains, mazeh, mazeh. Where do we have that in the Torah? When we're discussing the luchot, the tablets, the Ten Commandments, it says mizeh umizeh heim ktuvim. It says from this side and from that side they were written. They were miraculous that it was read the same way on one side, on the other side. Not such a big deal, except that it was engraved straight through. It was engraved straight through. If I read it this way, there it comes backwards. It says mizeh umizeh heim ktuvim. So the Gemara says, what was Esther's question? Mazeh v'mazeh, what's going on? Have they gone against the Torah about which it is written, mizeh umizeh heim ktuvim? Have they completely stopped keeping the Torah? Is that what's going on? How could this come about? What is Mordechai's answer? Vayaged lo Mordechai. Mordechai sent back, verse 7. Et kol asher karahu. Mordechai told him all that had happened. Kol asher karahu. Take a look and keep the place here, but turn to page 1066. It's what we read this past Shabbos at the Maftir, when we read about Amalek. 1066, 1067. What do we say over there?
Don't forget
Zachor, remember. Eit asher asa lecha Amalek, that which Amalek did to you. Baderech, on the way. Bitzeitchem mitzrayim, as you were leaving Egypt. Asher karcha baderech. Karcha, that he happened upon you on the way. Rashi says kara is lashon mikre. Mikre means something that's a chance occurrence. Okay? Another explanation Rashi gives, lashon kur. They cooled you off. They cooled you off. Meaning, everyone was afraid of the Jews and all that happened in Egypt. And now Amalek attacks. Now, he lost, but he attacks. You can attack. Right? It went from you can't attack, you can attack. He lost, well, he had the wrong tactics. He had the wrong strategy. We can. Vayik, right? Karcha is a lashon of mikre. What did Mordechai send back? Asher karahu. Now, Amalek's power, we say that Amalek has the same gematria. The letters of Amalek have the same numerical value as the letters of the word safek. What's safek? Doubt, unsurety. Mikra, things just happen. Doubt, unsurety, that there is any divine orchestration, any divine watching, any divine responsibility, repercussions, choreography of that which goes on. What does Mordechai send back? A kol asher karahu. They've been hit by this plague of karahu. Who was Haman? Haman was Haman ha'agagi, he's referred to. Haman was the scion of Amalek. But we've been afflicted with the plague of Amalek. What's that? Kar. We're cold. We're cold. We are completely disconnected. Where do we see this complete disconnect? That they got hana'ah. They enjoyed this party of Achashverosh. There can't be any greater disconnect than that. The story is told of a rabbi in Europe who was walking along with a group of his followers, and they came to a frozen lake there. And the Goyim were there, and they were carving a cross out of the ice. Right? To have a beautiful ice cross. And the Rebbe was standing there, staring, and they knew that he would not normally like to look at crosses. And here he is staring at this cross, staring at the work that they're doing, making this cross. And the Talmidim, the students, said to him, Rebbe, you're always so careful not to look at a cross. And here you are gazing, staring, contemplating. Explain to us. And he said, I'm so amazed. These are the purifying waters that we use for mikvah, that we use for immersion. But when it's cold, it can be turned into a cross. That's Asher Karcha that we saw over here. Right? This Amalek has set in. That was the message that Mordechai sent back. Et kol asher karahu. All that had happened with this coldness of Amalek, and also the eight parshat HaKesef and the silver that Haman said to give into the treasures of the king in order to destroy the Jews. But it's not the money. It's not Haman's money that's doing it. That couldn't do it. What is doing it? Asher karahu. It is our state of distance, of disconnect. That's what can allow the money and Haman's plans and all that to go into effect. Right? It's happening through that money, but that's not the cause. We always need to look for the spiritual cause. And something that comes up often around election time, right, is that, we need to make the best choice. Sometimes it's challenging to find a best choice. We need to vote. We need to be involved. We need, but when there's all this talk about what, there's always talk, if Obama gets elected, if he gets a second term, right, what's going to happen? It's going to be the end of the world, right? Now, right, has he been, right, a great president?
No.
Everyone has their opinions, right? Right? But something that I said then, and I repeat now, the destiny of this eternal nation of Israel is not dependent upon who the caucuses decide and who the American people elect as their president. That's not what's going to determine the fate and the destiny of this eternal nation of Israel. The Gemara says, Yad HaMelech, Leiv HaMelech, Biyad Hashem. The heart of the king, of the ruler, is in the hands of Hashem, is in the hands of God. Who was one of the most anti-Semitic presidents that we've had? Nixon. Who was the one who sent us stuff and munitions and all the things during the Yom Kippur War? Nixon.
Despite Kissinger's advice.
Yes, right? So, we need to make our efforts, but it's not being decided by the person in the Oval Office. He might be putting into effect, right, the decision, but the eternal nation of Israel's destiny is not dependent. And Mordechai said over here to Esther that yes, It's the money that was sent, but that's secondary. What was it? Asher karahu. My brother-in-law sent me something this morning that the only presidential candidate without a Jewish grandchild is Bernie Sanders. Yeah.
He's the only one who didn't show up to APA.
Right, the only one who's Jewish. Right?
He's the only one that did not show up.
APAC. At APAC.
Yes, Janet.
The worst anti-Semites are Jews.
Through this illness led to all this boldness that we still have righteous people like Mordecai.
Okay, so what was the answer then? Right? The answer was to put our trust fully in Hashem. What does Esther do? And we touched upon this last week. What does Esther do? She fasts. For how long? 3 days. Consecutive. Right? Not one of these, Ramadan month fast where you fast, I'm not putting it down, but where you fast a day and eat at night. But it was 72 consecutive hours. And then she goes before Achashverosh. Now, what made Achashverosh pick her? She was beautiful in his eyes. So you think you want to look beautiful in his eyes. That is once again karahu. That is following the chants of Amalek. She needed to be beautiful in whose eyes? In God's eyes. And that's how she came before him. Now the Gemara goes further. And it didn't mention this last week. Let's touch upon it now. When she goes before Achashverosh, okay, let's go to page 1258. So the king and Haman, chapter 7, came to feast with Queen Esther. The king asked Esther again on the second day at the wine feast, what is your request, Queen Esther? Shall be granted you. What is your petition? Up to half the kingdom it shall be fulfilled. Interesting, the Gemara says, up to half the kingdom, but not something that will split the kingdom. Half the kingdom, yes. Something that will split the kingdom, not. What will split the kingdom? The building of the temple. Right? That was foremost on his mind. So Queen Esther answered and said, if I have won your majesty's favor that pleases the king, let my life be granted to me as my request, and my people my petition. For we have been sold, and I my people to be destroyed, slain, exterminated. Had we been sold as slaves and serving God would have kept quiet, for the adversary is not worth of the king's damage. Thereupon King Achashverosh claimed and said to Queen Esther, who is it? Me who zeh? Ve'ezehu? Asher mala'o libo la'asot kain. Who is it that has done this? The Gemara says, Vatomer Esther, Esther said, Ish tsar v'oyev haman harazeh. The Gemara says that what did she do? She pointed to Achashverosh. You're the one who's done this. A malach, a heavenly messenger came and did what? Moved her hand over to point to Haman. Why is she pointing to Achashverosh? That makes no sense. Why is she doing that?
Because it was his signet ring. She didn't.
But that's the worst thing you could possibly do. That's not going to help to point to him. It was you? Oh, let me kill myself? Right? Why was she pointing to him? Granted, it was him. He's the one in power. Right? We often think of Achashverosh. He's often portrayed as this gullible, silly, person, king who was manipulated by Haman. The Gemara paints a very different picture. The Gemara gives a parable when Haman came to Achashverosh to pay him the 10,000 silver talents in order to have the Jews, permission to kill the Jews. The Gemara compares it to two neighbors. One has got this big crater in the middle of his field. The other one has got this big mound of earth in the middle of his field. So the person with the mound of earth goes to the guy with the crater and say, right, I'll pay you. Or the guy with the crater goes to the mound of earth, I'll pay you for that for that pile of earth to fill in my crater. He says, you want it? Take it. It's all yours. Right? That was Achashverosh's respond. Right? Do with people whatever you want to do. So Esther was correct in pointing to Achashverosh. It was the emet. It was the truth. But politically it was suicide. But she wasn't dealing with that. She was dealing with God. So she's dealing with God. The question comes, what does she do? She answers truthfully to God. Who is it? Points to Achashverosh. Hashem sends a messenger, a malach, what a malach is, and says, true, but let's work it this way instead. Right? Instead, points over to Haman, and what happens? Right? Haman then is destroyed. So there needed to be this awakening. One last idea I want to share with you, which fits in beautifully to this. There's a pasuk over here that we say in our Havdalah every week. We say, La Yehudim Haita Ora V'Simcha V'Sason V'Yikar. Vikar. Let me find it, sorry. The Jews
Had light and gladness.
Haita Ora, light, Simcha, happiness.
15.
You got it?
Yeah, I think. 1259.
Beautiful. There we go. No.
That's it. 16. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor.
16. Which chapter?
Here.
What page are you on?
1259. Is this it?
Yes, thank you. There we go. Good. Thank you. 1259, verse 16. La Yehudim Haita Ora V'Simcha V'Sason V'Yikar. The Jews had light, gladness, joy, and honor. The Gemara explains, Ora, light, that means Torah. Simcha, happiness, that means joy, that means Yom Tov, holiday. Sason, rejoicing, that refers to the mitzvah of Brit Milah. Yikar, honor, that refers to the mitzvah of Tefillin. And the Gemara brings how each of these, Torah is called Ora, Samachta B'Chagecha, holiday is called Simcha, Brit is called Sason, circumcision, and Yikar, Tefillin are called Yikar. So the question is asked, if that's the case, why doesn't the pasuk simply say the Jews had Torah, Yom Tov, circumcision, and Tefillin? Why does it say they had light, happiness, rejoicing, and honor? So the answer that's given is, the Jews, we had all these things. We were putting on the Tefillin, and we were doing Brit Milah, and we were celebrating holidays, and we were involved with Torah, but what happened? We were disconnected. We were detached. It wasn't something that moved us. What happened now? Now the Jews had Ora. Now they appreciated that Torah is illuminating. They understood that Yom Tov, holiday, that is Simcha, that is joy. I was on Monday nights. I have a group that I start with in my house, a group who are undergoing conversion, and they've all, at this point, they've all become in their process. They've all become Shomer Shabbat, fully Shomer Shabbat. So I asked them. I said, "Tell me, what is the hardest things, and what are the best things about keeping Shabbat?" So one of them shared with me a hard thing which I could not relate to at all, and she said not being able to control her hair. Right? For me, it's not a problem. Nothing to control. Right? Right? So each of them mentioned, different challenges along the way, but every single one said, "And what do you enjoy? What beauty are you finding about Shabbat?" And everyone said, unplugging, not being busy with everything else, being forced with the rush, like candles, stop. And just have that simcha, that happiness of being with family, being with friends, being with self, and not being electronically charged up, right, so fully. So the Jews had Yom Tov, now it became Simcha. The Jews had Brit Milah, now it became rejoicing. The Jews had Tefillin, now they understood that it was Yikar. The transformation was not so much as an external transformation, but it was in their approach, in their connection, in their attitude, in their devotion, in how they identified and who they were and what was important to them. Okay, my friends, we'll call it over here.
Does this just bring up a question? What do the sages and Chazal say if they were actually doing these things? Because we say almost always Torah will lead to these other things. What led to the, well, they were still doing all these things, what led to this disconnect? What do the Chazal say? And historically,
It's not so hard. I think we could look at ourselves, how things can settle into a pattern.
that's the whole point of what can we learn from
Yeah.
it? Because I think
That we need to have the Hashem in it. And never forget the Hashem that's in all the things that we are doing. Rachel.
Do you know what was the decision of the court for FBI versus Apple?
Oh,
I don't know what.
I think it's either today or tomorrow.
But I think they FBI found someone already, third party, who was able to decipher and know the
But yeah,
Oh.
but I still
Still
want to know
point.
the decision exactly.
Yeah.
So the decision itself is no longer right to be postponed because they have a third party. They cannot force
Don't have the point.
Apple to do it
Apple to do it,
if
but
they don't need Apple to do it.
But they hired someone who is able to do it. And they pay money and
interesting.
they're able to do
McAfee
it.
probably.
Interesting.
So it is done, but at least the government cannot force American company, either a separate company.
To open up a private company.
I would be strongly against it. But to hire someone, the government can do it.
How many people